You shouldn't be here. Nico pushed to his feet, eyes locked on the young man across the room from him. A room filled with greenery and bright blossoms all around them. He had to imagine that the scent would have been overwhelming, though it was beautiful. But not as beautiful as him. You're acting like I have any control over being here. Keegan's lips twisted, his face turning away. Where he stood, most of him was shrouded in shadows from what looked like some sort of fruit tree, but Nico didn't need to see him clearly to know exactly what he looked like. Keegan haunted his every waking moment, as well as his dreams. He wasn't quite as tall as Nico or as broad, but he wasn't small by any means. His body a well-honed weapon that showed in the firm lines of his muscles. His dark brown skin came from his African-American mother and Haitian father, and his dark brown eyes tended to be serious. When he was annoyed, they'd turn downright breathtaking. His black curls were always a little wild-looking, and Nico yearned to touch them. There was a thin scar on the left side of his face that went down to his jaw. Nico hadn't learned where it came from, but he hoped whoever had given it to him was still alive, so he could have the honor of killing them. Not that he'd told that to Keegan. He had a feeling his strong, independent witch wouldn't appreciate Nico's need to protect him. If you didn't want to be, you wouldn't, Keegan argued. Nico shrugged, grinning. Keegan's surliness couldn't fool him. Maybe, maybe not. Of the two of us, though, I'm not the one with magic. Slowly, he stepped forward, being careful not to move too fast. He'd made that mistake in the past. If he approached with any sort of speed, or even too much eagerness, Keegan would flee. It had been too long since he'd seen him, and he refused to have it be over so quickly. He'd take every stolen moment he could get and hold them to his heart like the greedy fool he was. "What is this place?" he asked, reaching out to run a finger over a large orange blossom, but not actually feeling it. "Alpha Davis's solarium. I used to visit it quite often when I was in his territory." "You're not there anymore?" Nico knew he wasn't. Keegan was very careful not to share where he was during their nighttime meetings, which was probably smart. Because if these conversations were real, impending threat or not, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from going to find him. And he wasn't sure what he'd do once he had Keegan in front of him again. And that was why he hadn't asked the Pax Coven to find him. When he got within a few feet of where Keegan was half hidden, he paused, frowning at the way Keegan's body tensed, and knew he'd reached the limit of how close he could get. But goddess, he wished there was no limit. He wished their time together was real and he could touch the man, hold him in his arms, scent him. "Are you safe?" he always asked. Even when he told himself over and over not to pry or pressure Keegan, he couldn't help but ask that. He wouldn't be able to live with himself or go about his day once he woke if he didn't. And like always, Keegan answered, "I am." But Nico knew that it was a lie sometimes. He didn't need to hear Keegan's heart or catch his scent to know it. Not when he could see for himself the edges of bruises and scrapes, the occasional limp. Whatever work Keegan did for his coven, he would never really tell Nico that either. It was dangerous. Of that he was sure. They stood in silence for a few moments, but Nico didn't really mind. Just being in Keegan's presence, even if he wasn't really with him, was enough to soothe his wolf and ease a little of the ache in his soul. Their moments together were all he'd had for months, and as long as he reminded himself frequently that it wouldn't be like this forever, it was enough to get through each increasingly long day. Except when he couldn't stop the voice in his head from whispering that all of these dream meetings were just that. Dreams. Figments of his imagination and nothing more. Those ended up being days where he holed up in his office in town and avoided everyone until he could get his game face back on.